Welcome to the OIS podcast. Today's guest is Bilal Khan, CEO of New World Medical, best known for the Ahmed Valve. Bilal and our host, Dr. Rob Rothman, talk about the man who created the valve, Dr. Mateen Ahmed, and his philosophy for building a company committed to both humanitarian efforts and to staying a private company. Take it away, Rob.
Hello, OIS podcast audience. I am happy to be speaking with you again today. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rob Rothman. I am a practicing glaucoma specialist, which is where I just spent the better part of this day in the operating room. And in my spare time, in quotation marks, I am a co-founder and managing member of In Focus Capital Partners, which is an ophthalmic life science venture fund. We have just completed the investment cycle for our first fund. We have 13 assets that we are currently in the process of propagating towards hopeful monetization and inflections in the near future. And we are getting ready for our launch of Fund 2 sometime towards the end of this year. For fun, I have been given the privilege of interviewing some very amazing people in the world of ophthalmology, and today is no exception. We will be speaking with Bilal Khan, who is the CEO of New World Medical. This is a very apropos conversation, Bilal, since I just spent half of the day using your products in the operating room. So I guess a glaucoma specialist podcast host speaking to the CEO of a glaucoma-focused company is sort of serendipitous, but so be it. And we can talk a little bit about that. So again, Bilal, thank you for taking the time to take part in the podcast today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully your patients do well today. But I've been a fan for your podcast for a while, and I appreciate the opportunity to share our story today.
Great. Well, thank you. And you were a much bigger help to me than I've been to you, I'm sure, especially today. So thank you for that. I think that for people who don't know New World Medical, specifically, I think everybody in ophthalmology probably does, except maybe retina guys. But for most ophthalmologists, New World Medical is a household name. And yet it isn't the type of household name that you think of when you're looking at some of the bigger surgical and pharmaceutical companies, right? Alcon or AbbVie and Bausch & Lomb and all these. But yet New World Medical is probably one of the most important glaucoma-focused companies that there is. And that's in no small part, in at least my opinion, to the fact that you've continued to innovate and create great products for the treatment of glaucoma, and have managed to do that while maintaining your status as a privately held company. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. I think that for those people who are going to become familiar with New World Medical, maybe after this podcast, it makes a little sense to talk about you, obviously, and your background, where you came from, and how you ended up becoming the CEO of this incredibly important company. So why don't we start from there? Take us back. Yeah. How did it all get started for you?
Now, happy to. So I'm from a small town in Wisconsin that no one knows outside of Wisconsin and ophthalmology. So it's actually Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, which is like the Beaver Dam I study. So ironically, I ended up in ophthalmology. So I grew up there. I went to University of Wisconsin, and then I became an actuary. And I was an actuary for 9 years in Chicago, LA, and then London. And when I moved to LA, I actually met my wife and ended up marrying her. And her father is Dr. Ahmed, who's the founder of New World. And so 5 years into our marriage, I had stolen his daughter and taken her to England, potentially as a bribe to get her back in the US. He asked me to take over the business. So for the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of running the organization. As you said, it's uniquely situated. So it's been I can't imagine a more fulfilling role. It's just been a lot of fun.
Well, that's pretty nice. So that's not a bad business to marry into. I happen to know Mateen Ahmed from many, many years ago, and it's a very bizarre story, which I'm sure a lot of people don't want me to bring up who might be listening to this. But Mateen introduced my senior partner, a guy named Arnie Priwas, who helped teach me about glaucoma many years ago, into a business transaction, and having nothing to do with ophthalmology or glaucoma, and we all lost a lot of money.
Oh, man.
We all lost a lot of money. So thank God your father-in-law has figured out a penchant for coming up with the fantastic glaucoma devices, but we haven't listened to any investment advice from him for some while. So, but that's the long story. But I was, I had the opportunity to meet your father-in-law, first many, many years ago when I first joined my current practice. And I guess that really the only product that was in existence at that time was the Ahmed Valve, right? So the Ahmed Valve remains New World Medical's, first and potentially most important product, at least for cases of severe glaucoma. So you had some business background, you were an actuary, and you were well married.
Yes.
So there are obviously some advantages and disadvantages of that when running an ophthalmology company, right? So there are some advantages of being an ophthalmologist or having ophthalmic experience, and some that come from not being one. So why don't we? How does not having any ophthalmic background, how has that been an advantage for you? Because I know that it has been.
Yeah, it has, and I think it's been unique. Dr. Ahmed had run the business for a number of years when I took over, so 20 years, and he's like Rambo. He can do a lot of different things. He's good at business, maybe not in investments, but he's good at running our business. He's an inventor, obviously, of high caliber. He's a great educator. So I had a wonderful mentor in Dr. Ahmed. So that helped me. But one of the advantages of not having the background is, I think at that point in the organization, it was actually maybe beneficial, because we only had 12 employees at the time. Now we're nearing 200. And, because he has that skill set, he could always jump in and just do anyone's job. I don't have that skill set, and having that clearly sort of in front of me at all times, like I'm not going to invent, I'm not an engineer, and I didn't grow up in the commercial world. It really forced me to bring in high quality folks. And I've been blessed to have hit on some very good individuals that we recruited into the organization, and had mentors in the glaucoma world, surgeons like yourself, who've really helped me too. And that's been beneficial as you grow, right? Because you can't grow as a one-man show. And I think that's, especially founder-run companies, sometimes they do stagnate because the founder has difficulty devolving responsibility, where I had no choice. So, and that's been a benefit to us, and has been sort of a secret to our success.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that you're right, and it's a very prescient comment that sometimes founders need to know when to step aside. And I think that New World has made that transition fantastically well. And I would agree with you that the quality of the people that you brought in has helped you significantly grow and expand. And I have this conversation all the time as an investor, whether or not you want to have somebody who's coming into a later stage company who's got significant experience in the industry or outside the industry. And it's interesting, here's an example of one where success has been propagated in some way by the fact that you were able to bring in people who didn't necessarily have to step on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. And also Dr. Ahmed didn't either, which is unique for a founder. I always tell people this story. When I joined, he did give me context, and he educated me about glaucoma and obviously the products and some of the situation. But when I would ask for advice about business decisions, he wouldn't give them to me. And I asked him why. Like, why won't you give me advice? Obviously you've been doing this for 20 years. And his answer was, I can't give you any advice on business decisions, because if I guide you, you're going to use me as a crutch, and then you're never going to learn yourself. So I know I did things over the years that really made him grit his teeth, which is extra hard for a founder, like when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into an organization. But it allowed me to sort of own decisions, and it allowed our team to have the freedom to operate without sort of that judgment from a founder or investors in some respects, that where we had freedom to really find our way as a management team.
Yeah. How much business do you talk about at Sunday dinner? Is there a rule? Is there a rule that you're not allowed to discuss certain things when you're together outside of the office? Does your wife get totally agitated if you start having? She does,
and which is surprising, considering she's like a half owner in the organization, because Dr. Ahmed only has 2 children, but she does not appreciate it. And her dad and myself, we can geek out about it at to no end. So it has to be controlled.
I would imagine. I would love to get her perspective. Maybe we should bring her on the next podcast and see how much you guys, end up conversing about things and her getting agitated at you. It's pretty funny. That happens a lot. When you have friends or family members who are engaged in your business. So
definitely, our board meetings are spirited. Don't worry.
I would imagine. Just remember that he wants grandkids. So I mean, the bottom line is he's not going to aggravate you too much. So
yeah.
I want to spend a few minutes, and I think it's important again for potential investors or people who are interested in learning more about the company from a financial perspective, how you've managed to stay private, all this time, and what your thoughts are on the future of you remaining a private company, and whether or not you believe or have already contemplated the prospect of not becoming a private company.
No, that's a great question. So, I'll take a step back to the first question. So Dr. Ahmed founded our business 32 years ago, and the context is sort of important, right? Because he founded our business at a time where the FDA had put a halt on or a pause on reviews of implants, specifically plastic ones, because there was silicone implant scares in the early 90s. And also there was a regime change in the FDA, and they were thinking of making it more difficult to approve devices and making it more on par with drugs, which is obviously a different standard and a different, sort of course. And that scared off a lot of investors. And as a result, he had difficulty raising professional funds, and he wasn't able to. So he had to bootstrap the growth of the business and also rely on individual investments in small amounts. And also the benevolence of surgeons at UCSF, UCLA, the Naval Center in San Diego, and also Moran, that really helped him get through to run the trial and be able to read it out and submit to the FDA. But as a result of those struggles, that's sort of allowed him over the next year or decade to buy out his investors and his co-founders, and then really reorient the company to his values and what he wanted it oriented to, right? And one of the things when I started, the first thing he told me was, I was like, so what do you want me to do? And he said, he's like, the first rule is you can't sell my company, right? And that was the first rule. But the second rule was, I was like, okay, so if we can't sell your company, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to benefit the people, right? I want you to benefit humanity. It's a big thing. And you've met him. He's a true believer, right? He talked you into more investments because if nothing else, he's a true believer in everything he does. Yeah. And I think for a lot of folks that don't have the opportunity like you've had to get to know him, it's hard to describe the force of nature that he is.
Yeah.
But the way we figured that out is look, when he gave us that mandate, it's a broad mandate. We think about that in 5 ways. We think about that in empowering surgeons like yourself, hopefully in the OR today, where you're able to, really benefit and enhance patients' lives. We want to expand access to care. We've always been committed to giving no charge products domestically, and we have initiatives internationally, which I'm happy to get into, to try to expand care in places where it's less developed health systems. We try to treat our employees well. We try to make really, it's one thing we're very proud of is that we have nearly 200 families that we're supporting through our organization. And we also donate 10% of our profits to charity every year, and mostly ophthalmic based. And then finally, we support our employees to go on mission trips. We cover 75% of the costs, 75% of the time. So that's the broad thing. But as we think about going forward, getting back to the second part of your question, he did tell me we're never going to sell. And yeah, we are committed to it. We've had a lot of success. And I think that mentality that he ingrained initially has led us to a lot of our growth, because we have a very long-term mindset and sort of a commitment to relationships with surgeons. And that allowed us to really double down in R&D initially and build out a pipeline where we have 4 concurrent projects at all time. And we've been launching products. We had 3 FDA market authorizations over the last 3 years, right? And I think that's very few companies do that in that type of succession, especially companies our size. But going forward, we're pragmatic, right? You can't have, we think about this a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations with the family, just you can't have one priority that are multiple priorities, right? They're always going to be ordered. And first and foremost, we are a business. We're pragmatic about that. And we also realize that we have a mission and a commitment to patients. If we want to be sincere about that, we have to be open to outside capital potentially, and even partnerships with strategics. And as long as they're towards our North Star, which is really about deepening our impact to patient care and also being equitable to our stakeholders, we're aligned with that. And it's something that we're open to. So we've been having more of those conversations recently, and we're not in a hurry because we're continuing to add value, but we are open to collaboration. I think that we'd be doing a disservice to patients and surgeons if we weren't.
Right. And I think that's a healthy attitude. Obviously, I think you have, it seems to me like your priorities are ordered correctly. And that is that you want to create good products that will better people without having to feel the pressure to perform to somebody else's expectations of what that reward should be. Sometimes that's limiting. Obviously, you have incremental growth then, right? You can only invest what you bring in, and without access to significantly larger amounts of capital, it's hard to do 10 projects at once or whatever. But you've managed, like you said, to have 3 approvals in 3 years, which is fantastically amazing. And we can talk about those products so people understand, what they are. And one product that is brand new, obviously Streamline, which we can talk about a little bit as well. So you've touched upon the fact that there is a significant amount of R&D going on inside of New World Medical. You have 4 concurrent projects at any one time. I know you don't want to disclose what those are. There's no need to disclose what those are. I mean, there's no reason for you to expose your pipeline, but I think that you've been a glaucoma surgical device, and I think people should assume that you're going to be a glaucoma surgical device company going forward. Is there any reason for people to think otherwise? Should people be thinking that you're going to decide that there are other areas that you want to tackle, or is it really a glaucoma company?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And that gets into one of my jobs in my role is to think about strategy and making sure we're being disciplined about it. And, we have, your strategy is shaped by your context, and it gets to sort of our focus. Our focus, like we have a long-term, we have the benefit of a cap table that allows us to be very long-term in our perspective. We have the AGV, which the Ahmed Glaucoma Valve, which, it has grown, and Dr. Ahmed had, we have a majority share of the US, and we have a vast majority of share internationally. So it was a great base of revenue to build upon. And the last thing is the nature of glaucoma, right? Like if we're going to focus on that, I think there's actually a misunderstanding in the market a lot of times when people talk about the value proposition for glaucoma products. And we've had the benefit of having close relationships with glaucoma surgeons around the country and internationally. And the fact that it's a category of diseases and it's progressive means that there's a need for a broad portfolio of solutions. So that, in a long-winded way, that sort of shapes us, our strategy, and the way we think about it is like, if you're just going to be a technology company that's just going to try to out-innovate everybody, it's like a gingerbread man strategy. You just got to run faster than everyone else so you don't get eaten, right? So, but the way we think about it is we think about the only way, because we're in a technology field that's ophthalmology, that's rapid, right? That's why you guys have this podcast and you put all these forums together, and you're in this space as an investor because there's so much opportunity and it's so contingent on innovation. So how do you distinguish yourself long-term in a sustainable way? The way we think about strategy is we think about it through Michael Porter's model. And I'm a big fan of Michael Porter's activity system. And basically his thesis is you want to create a distinct activity system to deliver unique value. And that's our goal. We want to create a reinforcing ecosystem over time. And that makes it difficult to replicate. And we're doing that around glaucoma surgical. And for us to go outside of glaucoma surgical, which we may do one day, but it has to be a clear thesis that leverages our activity system and makes sense. Like if we go into, like you said, retina, that the retina guys may not know much about us. We know less about them in a lot of ways, right? So like we don't have no differentiation in our R&D team, right? But for glaucoma, we're the only company that has done angle-based products internally and also has done subconjunctival products, long-term implants. We can do all of that. And we've done multiple glaucoma products. So every product, and there are varying degrees of impact, but our R&D team is getting better and stronger. And we continue to do that. Now, if I start jumping into dry eye or retina, that actually, I think, it takes the focus away and actually weakens your activity system. Or if I start going into in-office procedures, then all of a sudden my call points for my sales team is in the surgery center and the office, right? And you're trying to be everything to everyone, and I think it weakens you as an organization. So in the near term, I think I'm over giving you maybe too much information, but that's how we think about it. Is like, look, we're open to anything. We've been disciplined to glaucoma surgical. Our pipeline's glaucoma surgical, and we're committed to that. But if there's if there's something that's coherent and that's a high bar to hit, we will go beyond that.
Right. Well, I mean, look, you haven't given too much information. I think it's pretty obvious, right? You guys are a glaucoma surgical company. Your pipeline thesis and how you view the products that you will either have in development now or continue to try and develop going forward, will be in your sweet spot and in the place where you've had, tremendous success. And again, not surprising, for example, that the first commercial goniotomy product was really from you guys, right? I mean, non-mechanical goniotomy product, right? The Cahoot dual blade is, something that is used, significantly around the world. I think Trabectome may have been out technically before you, but that's a little bit more of a complex machine, right? Same concept, but innovating inside of a space. And again, Malik's brilliant guy, and couldn't be happier that he partnered with you. And that's sort of been the mantra, right? Find great products, figure out if they're going to be beneficial, and then propagate them and bring them to market. So I don't think anybody would be surprised by what you just said. Let's talk a little bit about the progression in your commercial offerings, because there is a little bit of a progression, right? And you started out with the Ahmed Glaucoma Valve, which is still at this point the only valved glaucoma drainage device on the market. And then you moved into the Cahoot dual blade. And then you produced a line of non-valved implants, right? The ClearPath line. And now you have Streamline coming up. So you had a whole bunch, you've gone sort of back and forth, right? Yeah. Subconjunctival inside the eye, subconjunctival inside the eye. So why don't you tell people a little bit about what's coming out? Because Streamline's just going to hit the market. It's really just coming out now, right?
Yeah, our official launch was April 1st. And really, in all fairness, I think ASCRS is going to be the big coming out party. And that's one of the benefits of, I think, folks that are insiders like yourself. We're aware of it more than I think other folks, because we're being privately held. We're able to delay disclosing what we have in the portfolio. But, we continue to think of glaucoma, like if we have one product in glaucoma, like if we just had the Cahoot dual blade or we just had the AGV, well, glaucoma, as you know, and you suffered through today, it manifests in a variety of different ways, and it's progressive, right? And
yes, it does.
Yeah. So, and the one thing is, like, if the patient lives long enough, whatever procedure it is not going to last. Especially individuals like yourself, like, knows that they're going to live with the results and have to deal with the post-operative care and the next procedure. You're planning out, and you're also trying to think which tools you need. And for us as an organization, we want to build out a comprehensive portfolio. So it's pretty obvious where all the anatomical targets are in glaucoma. It's defined where because IOP is the only proven way to sort of stem the progression of the disease, IOP reduction. And there's anatomical targets to do that. So we're building out a portfolio that will cover that comprehensively. And like you see it, we own sort of the late stage refractory treatment with the Ahmed Valve and now the Ahmed ClearPath. And now we think we have a first line solution in Streamline, and the Cahoot dual blade we think is complementary to that as patients progress. And it's, it's the second most utilized angle procedure in the country. So it's been something where it's been a big winner for us and actually expedited our growth and justified further investment. But we're going to continue to build out earlier devices and everything in between, so that connects those. But it's all going to be in glaucoma surgical.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look. So you have I'd be interested, one day in confidential matter to hear what's in development, just so we can sort of, get a better jump on what you guys are thinking. But I've always had the ability to innovate, and again, as a utilizer of your products, obviously appreciate what you guys have brought to the market. Is it surprising to you that nobody's tried to tackle the valve space at all?
So people have internationally. It is surprising, but when you look at the regulatory requirements and the opportunity, one of the things I think about a lot is just why certain technologies come to market, right? And there's a thesis. If you're an investor like yourself, there has to be a certain type of thesis and a certain type of profile to get returns for your investors, right? And a drainage device isn't necessarily going to provide the returns they need. And then if you're a strategic, a lot of these products that are in the tens of millions of revenue aren't of interest. They're looking for products that are in the hundreds of millions of revenue. And otherwise it doesn't makes sense for them to divert R&D resources towards those other endeavors. So there is a sweet spot. And then the other smaller companies like ourselves, a lot of them don't have the sophistication that we've been blessed with. So they can't do long-term implantables, which is a whole different story. You have to start with animal basic science studies. You have to justify those, the regulatory process for verification and validation. Then you have to run a US IDE, which is no small feat, especially with the dearth of clinical and medical affairs talent that is in the market today, right? I keep joking internally that my daughter, who's 5.5, I'm going to tell her she's definitely should go into clinical and medical affairs because that's, you've seen it too. Like there's a huge demand for all your portfolio companies. So in a nutshell, that would be my perspective. And I think there's companies that have tried to do it internationally, but I also think that sometimes there's a misunderstanding of why the Ahmed valve has been successful, and why the valve mechanism is so important, and also just the profile of the surgeons and what they're dealing with on a daily basis.
I think you've made it when people indiscriminately call every subconjunctival drainage device a valve.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the biggest misnomers in clinical medicine to say, oh, you're going to put a valve in, and sometimes I am, but sometimes I'm not. I'm saying, no, I'm putting a glaucoma drainage device. This one happens to be valved, that one may not happen to be valved. But you've captured the entire compendium of subconjunctival drainage devices because everybody just calls them valves. Yeah. And then I have to do my geek explanation of what's different between the Ahmed valve and non-valve devices. But that's how you've made it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Google it, funny, right?
Yeah, even other surgeons say that, like glaucoma surgeons who use both products, right? They use non-valve and valve, but they call everything a valve. It used to make me like concerned, like it would always bug me a little bit, but you're right, it's also complementary. Yeah,
it is. That's how you're doing a good job. It's interesting, and again, it's I keep coming back to it because as we're sitting here and talking, I keep thinking that we had Zen, right? So Zen came out a couple years ago now, different concept, but still subconjunctival device. You had the Express shunt prior to that, which is also just a trabeculectomy version. And the only thing that is on the imminent horizon, I guess, would be the InFocus shunt.
Yes.
And I think the experience or the prolonged amount of time that it's taking for that device to get to market is part of the reason that you were explaining that people haven't necessarily just run out and done this. The subconjunctival drainage space is very complicated. It seems to be that for whether it's for ease of clinical study or potential returns due to ease of use, people are focusing a lot more inside the eye, and looking at the angle. And unfortunately, the limitation there is that there's only so much pressure reduction you get from doing that.
No, it's true. And like, as you, again, not to go back to your long day today, but refractory glaucoma is not for the faint of heart, right? And I think that it's always interesting. You mentioned we sort of jump back and forth between sort of refractory and then early stage the products that we've launched. And as companies commercialize different products, it's always interesting to see their sales force get religion once they have to deal with refractory patients, right? It's just, you're never, like, you can be in cataract or like the MIGS market, you're a hero most days. And the refractory market is just, it's tough, right? And you're seeing even training and glaucoma fellowships changing because folks, it's not for the faint of heart. It's just definitely for a different type of personality.
Yes, it is, for a sort of a sociopathic, sort of self-deprecating and torturing personality. I guess that's what we are. And I don't know, Craig may yell at me for this, but as a glaucoma specialist, we often view ourselves as the, shit-feeding bottom dwellers of the ophthalmology community, right? It's like, it's gone down the toilet. Oh, let's send it to Rothman and those guys. Let's send it to his partner. Send it to all the glaucoma specialists out there. And we are tasked with, tackling a disease that is incurable, right? That will continue to progress no matter what we do. And basically it's a race against time. So, you're right. That's how we look at it. And again, it goes back to the business model that there aren't a lot of products out there that are dedicated specifically to the treatment of those patients, because fortunately, some of the newer treatments have prevented people from developing significant glaucoma many, many years later. I think angle surgery as an early treatment, almost every category of MIGS has got some benefit at keeping the pressure down. And it's a race, right? We want to just keep people from from losing their visual function, before they decide they don't need their visual function anymore, or God decides they don't need it, or whatever it is. But ultimately, the numbers are not as large as, let's say, the MIGS market.
Yes.
That you manage to be successful in the early parts of your business serving only that market.
Yes.
The early part of your success was based on servicing a relatively small percentage of what gets done surgically in glaucoma, at least in the United States. And it's a good story for, I think, for businesses out there, that if you want to tackle a small disease and be profitable, you can do it, but you got to be the best, right? You got to be the best, and you got to have a product that works unbelievably well, but you can still do incredibly well. And I think that's the sort of David and Goliath sort of analogy here, that if you've got one really good weapon and one really good shot at winning, you can definitely win. So fortunately, you've grown beyond that and brought us some more important, more useful products for the future. But I don't think people who deal with glaucoma really get it.
Yeah, I think it's hard, and I think especially because cataract is a dominant procedure, and that's just a different sort of treatment, right? Like day one, you're a hero, and there's a halo over your head almost all the time, right? Where glaucoma, there isn't that validation for the surgeon or the patient usually post-operative day one. It's more like you're managing through and hoping that it'll manifest over time.
Right. Well, everybody sees worse pretty much right away. So that's
exactly.
the complete antithesis. The only ones who have it worse than us are the retina guys. So God bless them, They have anatomic success and we have numeric success. So your pressure's lower, but I can't see. And they're like, well, your retina's attached, but I can't see. That's the opposite. So do you think that, and again, we're going to go back to pipeline just for a minute, because I think it's important for people to hear. I think there's multiple market opportunities here, right? We always need better things inside the eye, angle procedures and whatnot. And we always need better things outside the eye, long-term success, let's say, or, better IOP reduction. How do you decide, what you're going to look into in terms of R&D? Is it just, this is a better glaucoma product? Have you evaluated products that could cannibalize your own business? Do you think that that's an important strategy, as well, to sort of see if you can better yourself?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely something that we have to weigh, right? And the interesting thing, even because look, we are a business, right? First and foremost, that's just practical. There's the market opportunity a lot of times for the early stage products, even though the market's also very competitive. Sometimes it's greater as far as revenue goes, but we also feel like we have a unique position where we can do the refractory devices. We have the experience, and that's an underserved market, even with PRESERFLO's potential approval and Zen's relatively recent clearance. But yeah, so we balance those two because we are a mission-driven organization. So we try to serve both markets. And just to delve a little bit into our pipeline, we do have a new Ahmed valve that we hope to win clearance for next year, and then we're going to go into an IDE for another refractory device this year. And then we also have the other couple of products we have in the pipeline are earlier stage interventions. So there is a mix, and we try to balance between the two. And it's always interesting to see the discussion internally, right? Because even though the Ahmed valve is the dominant product, you always want to sort of obsolete yourself, right? And also those patients are the most vulnerable, and we're the best positioned to sort of enhance their care potentially. Through surgeons like yourself. So, we think that we should always leverage those learnings to try to continue to move them forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's a smart strategy, right? I mean, it's always, you have the experience in the refractory market. You've served it for so long, and improvements in whatever fashion will be better for everybody. I want to spend the last couple minutes, because you brought it up again, and I think it's important for people to understand how mission driven you are, because even back before you guys became a much bigger, more visible company, there was always that sense that at least your father-in-law was a charitable guy and somebody who was looking to provide some betterment for humanity. It was always a motivation, and interestingly, I think a lot of people may espouse that as a virtue of their own, but not everybody has the practical sort of history to back it up. Said, well, yeah, I mean, I think we all want to see humanity get better. We don't like to produce better products, but ultimately a lot of things become pure business decisions, right? But you guys have actually done that. I mean, you've actually supported underserved areas. You've done charitable things. You've had a mission to improve glaucoma care outside the United States. How does that work internally for you? How do you allocate resources to, let's say, less financially rewarding opportunities, for the company?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's been interesting. My background's in finance, right? So this is not my natural inclination,
right.
But it's been a real blessing to learn from Dr. Ahmed about this. And we had to balance it too, because I had to sort of find my way and how you institutionalize it. I don't have the instinctive giving that he does. He's just a very emotive sort of decision maker and just really passionate about what he does. And I think that's what you need in a founder, by the way. Like, I don't think I could be the founder like he was. I think going from zero to millions of dollars of sales is a lot harder than going from millions of dollars to tens of millions of dollars in a lot of ways. It's a different skill set. And you have to be a true believer like he is. So we try to balance it the way, we need to make sure that we're investing and that we look at the stakeholders, and that's why we try to codify it with those 5 different ways, because there's when you're having a strategy conversation internally, especially in a family-owned business, it can feel you can easily take it off course if you don't sort of give people sort of guidance about what the framework is, because you could obviously bankrupt yourself if you don't pragmatically define what that mission is and what that balance is. And that's why we've done it. Like the 10% profits, again, that's not a profit. So we are profitable every year, and that's something we do. So we try to define it around that. We try to the no charge products actually is not an issue, because in the US, most people are insured for the most part, especially because the population is mostly Medicare, because they're older. But you definitely do that internationally. The way I see it is actually a lot of companies, especially in places that are not commercially viable, you're actually not losing sales. And you'll see this in all the publicly traded companies in the space. In medical devices, the margins are 90%. So you're actually not being that generous. I hate to break it to people.
I know.
You're not being that generous, especially you're not losing sales, you're not losing revenue. So I think it's really incumbent on you. So we found our way. It took us time, right? But you have to balance all the stakeholders, right? And we want to make sure that we're being reasonable in our pricing with surgeons. We also want to make sure that we have enough revenue to invest in R&D, and also to make sure that we're providing our employees with robust compensation. So it is a little bit of a balancing act. And luckily for me, I have a board that basically trusts me to do whatever. So it's sort of myself, the management team. Dr. Cahook's been a great influence externally, both as a mentor on this front and obviously driving innovation. But yeah, it's a little bit of a art more than science. I can't give you a formula, but right. but it's nice that we have that mandate.
Yeah. Well, again, and I think as we sort of wrap up the conversation today, I just think it's important for people to hear that, because it's a unique attitude. And again, it's one that's been fostered for the entire time that I've been aware of your company, which is, since I started practicing ophthalmology. And it's been evident to everybody who knows what New World Medical does, but it has oftentimes sailed under the radar, right? Because it isn't as visible of a behavior as profit statements are on guidance calls for corporate company, for big publicly traded companies, right? Yeah. Where people get to hear that information, I think, a lot more readily. And as a physician, forget the investor, part of my life as a physician, that's appreciative. Like you and, I feel that New World Medical is on the same page as me, right? We're trying to do things that will make people's lives better. I've taken that into the investment world as well. That's how my partner, who's an ophthalmologist, and I and our entire board, who are ophthalmologists, look at the way that we invest in, and that is to try and find products that will make people's lives better. And if you can do that at the same time as providing return for investors, then it's home run, right? But doesn't absolve any of us of the responsibility to try and make it better for people. There's no reason to bring products that aren't going to really do a good job to market, in my opinion. So anyway, listen, Bilal, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate you being on this call. You and I have had some opportunities to speak, in person over the past few years, and it's great to get to do this in a more formal setting so people can hear. This is a lot cleaner conversation than we usually have, so good for the listening audience. Exactly. And again, on behalf of myself as a practicing glaucoma specialist, thank you. And on behalf of the OIS podcast audience, thank you as well. Hope everybody had an opportunity to listen in today, and I look forward to speaking with the audience again on future podcasts. Thanks again, Bilal.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the OIS podcast. Be sure to listen in next week as we discuss the latest innovations in ophthalmology with experts in science, medicine, and industry. Subscribe to our iTunes channel so you don't miss a thing. Got a story of your own to tell? Apply to be a guest at OIS.net.